All right, my friends, time for a mini lesson. So we got another tick trader payout here. Another one, 2080. We got our Tradeify ones last week, 3 grand. So about another 6 grand to the week. We got a few more accounts ready for payout in a couple days here, bringing us to the total of over 212,000 confirmed prop firm payouts on the year. So doing pretty well. So I had some questions about how I set up my daily bias and my plan of attack for the day. So I'm going to go over a blank canvas here on SPY on how I traded the 2 gap zones that we had on the daily chart. Because last video, I told you guys if we were under that GP, we would be flushing, right? And that GP was right here. And as we moved down, we had another leg down after hours, then a leg up today. All were very predictable, very nice moves. So I want to set you guys up with a bias on how exactly I traded this for over 460 NQ, MNQ points and a little over 16 grand total. So let's go on to the daily chart. This is where my bias always starts. So this was the golden pocket day we said would stay under, right? Up at 684. And if it went under that, we would attack the daily gaps and the floater candle. So we have one gap above right here, which 1, 2, 3 days held before it cracked down. And then this gap tested twice in the last 2 days trading. Step 1, I always like to zone out the gaps if we are planning to trade into them, like our call was trading into the gap. That was our bias from a few days back. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take that zone or gap, zone it out like this. I'm going to take this gap, I'm going to zone it out. Now I have daily gaps to work with, right? So for context, I told you guys this was the downside under golden pocket. So what I did was I take my high-low of the daily range, I turn it gold every single time, and then if we get a breakaway of one way, which we did here, you will see what I'm talking about on Fibonacci cycle. So here's the high-low, what I always like to do in the daily in the gold. We said if it comes under this GP, we are dumping into the gaps. Now, I gave you a target of like right here, near the gap last video, and it went slamming past that into the second gap, which gives me a lot more biased, right? I work off something called live tags in the ETFs here of SPY and QQQ. I trade the futures off SPY and QQQ. I don't really care what the futures are doing at any point in time. I care what the SPY and the QQQ are doing. And this is why. So when we got this fib and we had the call down, the first extension is the 1618, as always, that we look for, right? And when we seen that dump, we had came into the 1618. Now, we surpassed this gap on top, not filling it. As you can see, 680 here did not fill that whole gap, right? Because after hours, it flew down, right? And came to the second gap we did on the daily. So for this trade day, I said, okay, well, we have that gold GP and 1618. If we hold right here, and our long call for my group is right here, top of this gap, we're going to open up, hold it, and we're going to push to fill this gap, because generally we don't leave unfilled double gaps on the daily. So what that looks like here, just in case you want to see the daily, is remember this gap right here. We pushed in 1, 2, 3 candles, then we had that super low gap down. And we said, well, if it holds this gap right here, we have a chance to come up and fill the gap backwards, because we attacked the gap from the top side here. We attacked the gap from the top side. We attacked the gap from the top side, but we never filled it from the top side. We filled it from the bottom side of this candle here. So that's why double gaps are huge magnets for my algorithm strategy in computers. So you see this guy right here that dived into the gap, launched itself into that second. So my guess was, well, as long as it holds this gap, it's going to return to this gap and fill. Yeah, lo and behold, to the penny. Gap to gap on the daily. Not too hard, right? So we're going to leave that same Fibonacci on, because the gold fib is always live tag outside of an extension. So again, this gold fib back here, the 1618 did hold. And for my Fibonacci rules, I'm adding extra confluence, extra confirmation, right? From this gap and this 1618. So the gap hold and anything over the 1618 was going to launch us back to the gap fill and the 100. Obviously, the 100 is from this low, 1618 to the 100, along with the gaps, right? So After we launched ourselves down, you notice where the bottom is, the 2618 after hours. That brings us to today's trade day. I'm going to do the same thing I just exampled here. And I'm going to turn this pink just so you know the difference between the two dailies. And we'll extend this one and bring it, and that brings us to today's day trade. So having a gap again, we filled this gap here. The lower gap does not have a fill. Okay, same old, right? Let's back it up here a little bit so you can see. Yesterday we pressed into the lower gap, but did it fill it? Nope, same scenario. What did it do? It launched itself down to the 2618 from the first gold and the 1618, resulting in a massive overlapping channel of support, right? And then you notice it did the same thing as yesterday. What does that mean with the gaps? Price action launched itself down, pressed into the gap, found higher low confirmation on that gap, and launched itself up. Does that look familiar? Launched itself down, passed the gap, popped back up, held the gap for confirmation, launched itself up. Okay? Same pattern play out, gap to gap, daily to daily. Gaps are still my number one volume imbalance metric that I use for algorithm magnets. Now, back to the fibs. If we have this pink fib, which we drew from yesterday's action, right? 2618 from 2 day ago action, that channel created on extensions is right there at 671. So after hours yesterday, we held a very important channel. This morning, we held this super important gap. Now, it doesn't have to fill today or anything like that because we had yesterday's lows. And for my group, this is what I put on for yesterday's lows. I said, guys, anything over yesterday's lows, we're going long into the GP, right? The pink GP, because that is untagged. Remember, the pink GP was created here. So for the high to low, that means this golden pocket has absolutely no tags. So when something ranges to the 1618, comes back to the 100, and from that 100 holds, goes to the extension, which is a magnet because, again, we did not tag it from the prior day. So we held the gap and yesterday's lows, and that was our confirmation. So I said long all the way to the GPs, and that was the end of my longs for the day. Now, let's clean it up a little bit, and we'll show you the intraday because we found the extensions, we found our support, and all the goods. What else did we play today? Well, my last ending trade, I wanted to see the 100 EMA on the 1 minute play out. It was actually a Q's trade, so let's go back over there because we're on NQ today. All right, so here's the initial bias for me on Qs because I was on NQ today. And again, same exact stuff, but again, I was actually trading NQ off the QQQ and ES off the Q, vice versa. NQ off SPY today. All I do is pay attention to SPY. I even trade my NQs off there. It's a little different. So here's the over under. Yesterday's lows is auto coded into the blue. And that's what we said today for my chat. I said anything over yesterday's lows, right to the golden pocket. Perfect. And then I said, well, I get off stream at about 10 a.m. and the market gets a little stagnant for me. I like to play the opening volatility 2 hours, and that's it. And when it comes to that golden fib, I had a trade idea here that played out half, right? I said anything under the 50, we're going to go target one short 100 EMA. Why would I say that? Well, back here, this is the 100 EMA on the green. You see it break over all the moving averages, including the 100, ram right into the 50 fib, gold high low like always, comes down, misses the 100 EMA. That's a shy, right? Price action could have had a nice little tag of the 100 before it moved up, but it didn't. So the next rally, you look to go higher high, sweep out the prior high day, and then return to that moving average for a magnet, generally after 10:30:11 EU close for Central Time. So I called the short to the target one to the 100 EMA, and then if it went through that, a back test of pre-market high, that was our best case scenario. Excuse me, for a short call. So as you see here, action got to the prior GP, which yesterday's high low is always gold, swept those highs, created that, hit the short target, and we never got a confirm to continue. What would a confirmation like this for a short look like? Well, since we hit our target, called from the 50 to the 100, that's target one. As you see, we launched ourselves into new highs after target one. So if it would have confirmed short for you, which would have been a break and a retest of that 100 EMA to continue down to our target two, which would have been a back test of the pre-market high. Because again, you see that snap through, 50, come down, nowhere close. So I was looking for a potential hit here. Now, I would have liked to slip this and then continue long because that was just a temporary downside metric that we wanted for that short. So that launch up to the 50 comes down, doesn't hit, sweeps highs. I wanted it to sweep lows, specifically this one. And if we would have came down to here, swept this up here, I would have bought that right here because we would have came into that triple GP. You know me and intraday GPs and algos, right? So I took this one here, high load it. Oh, extendo. There we go. So the multicolored one is the minute. And there we go. Best case scenario for magnets. So what do we see here? Let's delete the gold, be it less confused. And this was the ending trade that I would have put on. So we put these fibs on the triple, pushed up, shied the 2, held, 100 EMA hold, 3618. And now we're on a very slow grind, so we don't look for those easy scalps with volatility on the way down. We have an algo grind. The candles are very small, very slow, so we're not looking for that. The triple algo down here, 1 minute no tag GP, has then concluded the highest point that I like to use for extensions on wide Fibonacci, not small 5 minute 15. This is a wide triple. So 423, that was the top of the day. So watching price action confirm late day back. And what is our favorite trade? Back from the 423. Once we lose that, it just recycles the fib. So let's back that up one more time. We'll do the 5 minute chart. Cycle up, cycle down. When you find a perfect algorithm, like we did. So we have the high low in the minute. 1, 2, 3, 4 extension. Can't get over the 4. 3, 2, best case scenario is we're going to see that 1618 pivot coming up. Now, what's next and what's the old prediction that we want to see? Well, we'll go to the 1 minuter on both SPY and QQQ. And then we're going to notice something, and mean imbalances are well known. Something look interesting here to you guys. Big old red gap indicator that we have on our group here on TOS. 1 minute gap open on Qs, 1 minute gap open on SPY. Those volume imbalances are not paired, which means if they were in the exact same minute, if we came into the candles, right here at that 12:59 to 1 p.m. Central. Obviously, the Qs is a lot later out here at 2 p.m. something. So they're not paired, but we do, in fact, have 2 right on that backside. So we're going to go back to that 5 minute chart. We're going to mark those off. And I'm going to use my fibs as over-unders just like I did for the biased. All right, for the Qs, we're going to have to redraw that because it's on the other drawing and I don't feel like going through it. All right, so we got our triple, and this one's going to be based off Qs here because it has the triple that's open. So we have 1 minute gaps here and here. The 2 things I want to see if it wants to go back long is fibs are under, right? Recycling to best case scenario 1618, okay? If the Q cycles back down and holds 621 and some change, we can come back up to that gap even as early as tomorrow, right? Thursday trades. Same thing with the SPY. SPY has a little different intraday algorithm here that kind of got us wonky today. So I'm going to use that one. So I'm going to say here, you notice that awkward candle, I think it was 9:21 a.m. Yeah. That was an algo candle. So you're going to fib that out. There we go. Great. So my thesis will be anything above this algo candle will be long biased here to the gap and the 2618 that I just made. Anything above the 1618 back to the gap. I only want this trade at the moment. Any other trades I will reassess tomorrow morning if the action drags this down underneath those supports. I don't care about anything else at the moment. That is that. So anything above 621, we'll see you back up 625 overnight. Don't forget to utilize your daily Fibonacci on this. And then coming into Friday after we get a pop chop day, and I'm really hoping we just get this awkward, like choppy, nasty day up here, right? And then just wonks itself down for Friday, because my Friday target coming in, if we get the closes, obviously, is going to be that gap fill here. So the best case scenario for me is a repeat of what we just seen. All-time high, 3 candles doing nonsense. Drop. We have the break. 3 candles doing higher low, higher highs. Friday, break. But right now, obviously, we need to wait for Thursday. So we're going to wait for another. We got 1, 2, 3 candles in nonsense land after an all-time high. We are now touching 2 very big algorithm daily gaps. 1, 2, 3. That will be a huge, whoops, magnet to the downside if we close under that 10. And then, of course, if we go a little higher, we'll reassess. But what I want to see is just another day that holds above the GP, gets one more little high. 10 SMA tag is completely possible. Anything under that 680.64 for Friday, womp, gap fill, okay? And of course, it has to go under these levels, right? It has to start closing under this floater high. So Thursday, it's going to look like this. We're going to move up that candle. We're going to hopefully get that internal 1-minute gap right there. Even if it wicks up a little bit more, touches this GP, that's fine. We have 1 high into the gap. We have a higher high from today. If we get 1 more higher high, right, even if it opens pretty strong, right where we want our support, right here, and it makes a candle like this, that's fine. We're looking at this GP then as resistance, which is going to be this no tag, 11.3. It's the golden pocket. So if it goes as high as this, it will also hit this 3.618 and launch itself down potentially for the gap down. Now, of course, again, we have to stay under this GP gap top and then have really good speed under the floater high. So if you do see a huge candle close on Thursday and you see it to just consolidate up here, you're obviously not looking for that downside for the gap fill if we close super strong over these 2 candles. I'll show you where we're going to look if we have a strong close Thursday instead of a sweep high Thursday and come down. If for some reason we get a very big push to the upside tomorrow and close super high, we could have a run for the gaps left open on FOMC that we talked about on the 5-minute chart. Here it is up here. That is left open from FOMC, 26,358. So if we get another strong Thursday, closes really close to some of these highs, and then Friday's the squeeze push over those highs to track down this, I would only look for that on a very strong Thursday close tomorrow. So whatever the day trade gives us and whatever the intraday price action gives us, we'll be ready for it. Thanks for tuning in.